The Bank of Canada just told Canadians to accept a lower standard of living. Accept it?
What an onslaught of terrible news for us Canadians this week.
That we just need to sacrifice more. It's that simple.
And unless we change some other things, our standard of living as a country, Canadians, is going to be lower than it otherwise would have been.
Canadians must be prepared to make sacrifices.
Inflation being stickier than the Bank of Canada would want. I think that they're really playing with fire right now.
Bank of Canada basically just said that we have to accept a lower standard of living here in Canada.
How does one live a lower standard of life in Canada?
Like wages, housing, and inflation, they're not just cycling right now.
The government says that we need to sacrifice. I'm sorry, we have already been sacrificing.
Canada is bankrupt, and that bubble is going to burst. And
welcome to Canadian Rant, the voice for every hardworking Canadian who's tired of being told to sacrifice more. Recently, Mark Carney said that Canadians need to give up more to save this country. But here's the truth. What's left to give? We've already lost affordable homes. We've already watched our grocery bills double while our paychecks stayed the same. We've watched our savings vanish, our jobs disappear, and our hopes for a better future fade. Now, the Bank of Canada is telling us to lower our standard of living, as if ordinary Canadians haven't already been forced to cut back on everything that made life normal. Families are skipping meals, parents are choosing between heat and food, and seniors are rationing medication just to survive. And through it all, the people making these statements, the ones in suits, the ones on TV, they live in comfort, untouched by the pain their policies create. So when they say sacrifice more, we ask, what more do you want from us? Our dignity? Our future? Because Canadians have already sacrificed everything but hope. Before we go deeper, make sure to subscribe and join the Canadian Rant community.
How the fuck does this make any sense? The Bank of Canada just told Canadians to accept a lower standard of living. Accept it? Are you fucking kidding me? Our Canadians have been living that lower standard already. People can't afford food, can't afford gas, can't afford rent. Over 2 million Canadians per month are lining up at food banks. 1 in 4 kids in Canada is going to school hungry. Families are losing their homes to foreclosures because everything is getting tighter and tighter. And we're told to accept this? I thought our new government was for the better Canada. But 7 months in, what's changed? I'm gonna tell you, it's gotten worse. Our hospitals are jammed. The minimum wait time is 8 to 10 hours. And guess what? People are actually dying in ER waiting to be seen by a doctor. People are scared to walk home at night because of all the criminals on their streets. Insurance companies are not paying out for all the stolen cars that are being shipped overseas. Immigration's out of control, and small businesses are suffocating under taxes that's already the highest in the world. So you tell me, how much lower can you go on your standard of living? Maybe put it in the comments. Maybe I'm missing something. But the truth is, no one is coming to save you. The system is not designed to save people like me and you. You've got to start building something on your own. Whether that's a digital business, e-commerce, freelancing, whatever. Waiting on this government to fix your problems is like waiting for a lifeboat that's never coming. You've got to build something now. Because if you don't, this next chapter of lower living standards becomes permanent. And if you don't know where to start as a side hustle, I can teach you digital sales and how to get to 5 to 10K a month. Comment sales below and I'll reach out to you. But regardless of what you do, I'm rooting for you.
And unfortunately, what that means is that unless something else changes, our incomes will be lower than they otherwise would have been. They'll grow, but they'll grow along a lower. This was the old path. Now there's a new path, which is below the old path. There are things the country can do to try to bend that curve up, but those aren't things monetary policy can do. These are more structural changes. I mean, fundamentally, as a senior deputy governor has hammered many times, we need to get our productivity growth up. And if we can do that as a country, we can bend that curve up. So, I mean, I think what's most concerning is that unless we change some other things, our standard of living as a country, Canadians, is going to be lower than it otherwise would have been.
So all in all, from my perspective, this would mean that Q3 basically barely came in positive on a nominal GDP, 0.1% quarter over quarter growth, which would mean that on an annual level, we're growing at less than 0.5%. And this keeps Canada right on the edge of stagnation and recession, and especially with inflation being stickier than the Bank of Canada would want. I think that they're really playing with fire right now to try to avoid a stagflationary situation, which would have a really bad impact on Canada's economy.
Man, what an onslaught of terrible news for us Canadians this week. And no, I'm not talking about the Blue Jays losing in the World Series. Devastating news, yes, but that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Bank of Canada governor coming out and saying we have to lower our standard of living in Canada. That is both embarrassing and alarming. Canadians pay some of the highest income taxes and other taxes in the world. 42% of the average family's income goes towards taxes. And what do we have to show for it? Apparently nothing. This gentleman over here, the governor of the Bank of Canada, comes out and says we got to lower our quality of life pretty much. We got to lower our standard of living. While all this is going on, Mark Carney comes out and says Budget 2025 will help make generational investments to help build up our economy. What the hell does that even mean, Prime Minister Carney? Generational investment? That just sounds like you want to tax us more, especially young Canadians who can't afford to be taxed more. We're going to be paying off this debt for the rest of our lives. We are going to be a slave to this system if this continues. And it was just announced that your new budget is going to rack up over $78.3 billion of debt. Who's going to be paying that off? Us, the next generation of Canadians that won't be able to afford a house or do all of the other things that our parents and grandparents were able to do before us. But hey, what do I know? Keep spending money we don't have, keep letting in millions of immigrants, keep allowing criminals to go back out on the streets, and keep voting Liberal. Keep doing all those things if you want to destroy Canada. Well done.
So, the Bank of Canada basically just said that we have to accept a lower standard of living here in Canada. So you're telling me that in Canada, one of the richest countries in the world, a country that is seen by so many to be one of the greatest countries in the world, possibly, we have to accept a lower standard of living? Like, I don't think we're going to be considered a developing country. Like, obviously it's never going to be that extreme. We're still a very developed country. And I don't want to get too political about things, but me being jobless right now, looking for jobs, I really just moved back into my parents' place because I couldn't afford to live in my apartment without a job. I have my dog though. Look at him, so cute. It is not looking too hot for Canadians right now. I can see why people are moving to like Asia and Latin America. It's crazy out here.
Are you guys prepared to make sacrifices? Prime Minister Carney did say that Canadians must be prepared to make sacrifices. And then at the end of last week, when they announced the interest rate drops, we are told by Tiff Macklin that we need to, as Canadians, accept a lower standard of living. Are you guys ready?
If you're from Canada, holy crap, our government says that we need to sacrifice. I'm sorry, we have already been sacrificing. But in order to get out of a recession, we have to continue to sacrifice. And I feel like we already have been doing this for far too freaking long, worrying about our paychecks, worrying about the cost of everything, going to the grocery store, losing jobs, you name it, we are stressed. Here's the thing. You need to have a plan B. Do not just sit there and rely on your job because who knows what could happen. You can't rely on the government. You need to rely on yourself. And that's exactly why I did this Plan B, my simple side hustle that gets me paid every damn week, because there's no way I'm going to rely on anybody else but my little self to figure this shit out. If you want some information about the simple side hustle that gets us paid every single week, you just need to put a 10 in the comments. This company pays us to be a member. Thing is absolutely insane. If you want some information, just put a 10 in the comments. I'd be super happy to help you.
Okay, Canadians, I've been saying this for I don't know how long, that Canada is bankrupt, and that bubble is going to burst. And now that the budget officer finally said so, I hope libtards are going to wake up and realize that they voted in the wrong guy. That instead of voting for change and prosperity, they voted for more of the same Right now, Carney is spending all of our money overseas, and he's doing absolutely nothing for Canadians. So congratulations for the destruction of Canada, because you are part of the problem and not the solution. When will you finally wake up? I mean, I don't understand why people want to destroy this beautiful country. This was the best country in the world, and people came to Canada so that they could have a better life, so that they could live freely and without fear. And now look, there's so much uncertainty, and it's only going to get worse. So we better pray and return back to the Lord before it's too late. God bless you all. Have a good day.
So I just watched what the Bank of Canada just said, and how we have to live a lower standard of life in Canada because the country is bankrupt. So because of reckless spending, Canadians must sacrifice living a lower quality of life, so that way our liberal government can continue to spend money without actually making any money for the country, but they're making money for themselves. Make that make sense.
Breaking news. After sending millions of taxpayer dollars outside of Canada and then telling Canadians that we need to sacrifice more, the Carney Liberal government will table their first budget tomorrow. And here's a sneak peek. $382.5 million on Women's Economic Leadership and Opportunities Fund. $54.6 million on Pride Security. $232 million on gender-based violence. I think we have laws for that, whether male or female, you get locked up. $5 billion for the Strategic Response Fund. $13 billion for Building Canada Homes, which is usually like private contractors. I don't know if taxpayer dollars usually goes into that. $660.5 million for gender equity and gender-based violence protection. Here's a fun fact. Canada pays $1 billion in debt interest charges per week. That's $1 billion a week. Excuse me for a few minutes while I go and empty the contents of my stomach.
It's a fact right now that more and more Canadians are stressed out more than ever about money. Over half of everybody worries about their personal finances. The government says they're working on some big economic plans, but in reality, it's going to take years to see any sort of improvement. For now, we see Canadians that are struggling with high debt loads, smaller paychecks after paying their bills, and the reality that retiring early or actually even retiring on time is certainly not the case for a lot of people. So on average, Canadians owe about $1.85 for every dollar of disposable income. That is the highest in the G7. Now, most of this is actually tied up in mortgages, and collectively, it amounts to $3 trillion. The dream for a lot of people is just to be able to make their next mortgage payment without borrowing even more money to pay that mortgage payment. So, in all reality, this housing crisis has really undercut the middle class. A lot of folks just can't get ahead. And again, this is why housing and talking about housing is now a political thing, which I wish it wasn't, because I wish it wasn't a political thing. I don't like really talking about politics too much, but the fact that housing is now political is just, it's so weird, but it's now the reality. And again, we still have 3.8 million mortgages that are coming up for renewal at the end of 2026. We are just about to enter into that period. And 62% of those homeowners haven't felt the pressure of higher mortgage payments yet. Unfortunately, I think more pain is coming for a lot of these people. At the same time, everything else costs more. We all can feel it. When we go to the grocery store, even when we go to Costco, we're spending way more than we used to. Stats Canada even tells us that our household spending is outpacing the amount that our incomes are growing. Naturally, people have to borrow just to keep up. But now even the borrowing is slowing down because people are truly maxing out. So for a while, a lot of Canadians' income is going towards paying off their debt and not actually saving or building for retirement. So it looks like we're entering another decade of lower standard of living.
As a 26-year-old homeowner, the rate drop this week is not what I took out of Wednesday's meeting. Everyone is so ecstatic that we saw interest rates drop by 25 basis points this week. But that should not be the headline. The real story? The Bank of Canada Governor Tim Macklin said that Canadians should be prepared for a lower standard of living. Governor Macklin said that Canada is facing a structural shift. Things like wages, housing, and inflation, they're not just cycling right now, they're resetting. For homeowners, these higher costs that we've been seeing might just become the new norm. So while everyone's really celebrating a tiny drop in rates, the big picture is we might not be bouncing back like we think we are. The affordability we once knew might actually be gone. If you already own a home, it is time to prepare ahead of this shift. It's time to revisit your mortgage plan, check your renewal early, and make sure your debt is working for you. Stop looking at just these rate announcements and start looking at long-term stability.
The new federal budget is out. And what's the main news here? Well, it looks like Canada, you better get ready. There's going to be a lot more spending going on by the government. There's going to be a huge $70 billion deficit approximately. And you know what I don't get about this budget is the fact that this budget was supposed to be about Canada's future. But apart from the fact that they have targeted some bureaucracy cuts, which is good. We don't need that many government jobs. That's good. I don't really see anything of big consequences here. Homes, you're going to get those small modular homes. Okay, that's not going to solve the Canada crisis. AI, it doesn't seem like there's going to be tremendous investments that put us in the forefront. And oil and gas and natural resources, I've been saying this all along. Why are we not using our natural resources? Why not? It looks like we're in for more pain, Canada.
Canada, just when we thought it couldn't get any worse, it does. In a recent conference, the governor of the Bank of Canada has stated, unless we make some changes, our standard of living as Canadians is going to be lower than it's already been.
What's most concerning is that unless we change some other things, our standard of living as a country, Canadians, is going to be lower than it otherwise would have been.
Now, how demotivating is that to hear as a young Canadian? I'll keep saying this in my videos, investing as a young Canadian is no longer an option, it's mandatory. Simply working hard no longer gets you a middle-class life. You have to do more than that. And ultimately, you have to put your money to work. So let this be your wake-up call to start investing. But not only to start investing, but to take control of your personal finances. Personal finance is literally the best skill that you could possibly have in your life, and the schools don't teach it. Believe me, I'm a finance major and this stuff is not taught. So get serious about your future, start saving, investing, and making the right choices now, and you'll ultimately thank yourself later for it. So if you're a Canadian and all this is new to you, click that follow button and join me on this journey as we achieve financial freedom in Canada.
This isn't about politics anymore. This is about survival. Canadians have been told to tighten their belts for years, but the belt's already strangling us. When Mark Carney and the Bank of Canada talk about sacrifice, they're not talking about themselves. They're not giving up their bonuses, their multi-million-dollar homes, or their corporate safety nets. They're talking about you, the worker, the parent, the student. They're talking about the people who make this country function, and yet can barely afford to live in it. The truth is, this isn't sacrifice anymore, it's suffering. And what makes it worse is that they're normalizing it, telling us this is just how it has to be. But look around. You'll see the cracks everywhere. In small towns where stores are closing, in big cities where tents replace homes, in grocery aisles where people put food back because they can't afford it. Canada used to be a land of opportunity. Now, it's become a test of endurance. How long can you keep working without breaking? How long can you survive in a system that keeps demanding more while giving you less and less? But here's the thing. This can't go on forever. The voices of ordinary Canadians are getting louder. We're starting to question, to push back, to demand accountability. Because if the system keeps asking us to sacrifice everything, then maybe it's time the system itself sacrifices something, for once. To everyone watching this, don't lose hope. This channel, Canadian Rant, isn't just about complaining. It's about connecting, questioning, and standing together. Because change starts with awareness. And awareness starts with voices like yours. Share this video. Comment your story. Tell us what you had to sacrifice. Because the more they tell us to sacrifice, the more united we must become. This is our Canada, and it's time to remind them we've sacrificed enough.